Basically, for everybody who hasn't watched or haven't heard about the Google keynote, you one, live under a rock, and two, just let me enlighten you. So basically, in that keynote, we got announced that Google, Samsung, and Fitbit are working together to finally create the best Android smartwatch that we have seen to this day. Before this announcement, you basically only had two choices. You had to go Samsung or go home. Google's Wear OS, despite of being the first smartwatch software to hit the consumers, it unfortunately didn't get the attention or support it needed. As the story unfolded, even though Apple released its first smartwatch a year later than Google, Apple did a much better job integrating the watch to the almighty ecosystem, and Google just didn't support it. They just stopped. Something that let Samsung push their smartwatch OS Tizen. Before this announcement, or also known as a year ago, Google pushed and started updating their Wear OS. Do still most people prefer Samsung smartwatches to the point of calling it the best smartwatch for Android phones. Despite of having the limitations of not having Google Maps and a limited Samsung apps experience. And that brings us to the present day. Google announced that these three powerhouses are going to work together, and we as the consumer will benefit tremendously. This looks and sounds to me that they will make more and better premium smartwatches. And since this new and better Wear OS will be open source, we'll see even more companies adopt to this new and better Wear OS. Because if Samsung, the previous best smartwatch software, is working on this, we have probably a lot more companies that will be on board to making and trying their shot at making a good smartwatch. For you who watched the keynote, you know that apps used to be a little bit laggy or slow animations if you didn't have 1 gigabyte of RAM. So that they have optimized the OS to be 30% faster is a really good sign. And that's just like the all around minimum. And smoother animations, of course, as they said. I still want to reiterate, I think for the budget conscious buyer, you should still hold off for one more year. Last year, I truly was excited for Google's return to Wear OS, and I personally and truly want to say I expected a lot more from Google. As you guys know, partnerships can be really tricky and can legitimately just end in a couple of seconds. Google and Samsung have always had a rocky relationship, like when Samsung wanted to have their own Android like OS and not relying on Google's open source operating system to run their phone. The announcement was especially a big surprise to me because Samsung phones have lately distanced themselves from Google. In August last year, Samsung announced that they will work closely with Windows. This made a lot of sense to have more Samsung integration into Windows software, especially because of the Samsung DeX. For you who don't know, you plug your phone to a screen and your Samsung phone becomes a PC. So now it becomes like a Windows PC. And in exchange, it started having more pre-installed Windows apps like Word and PowerPoint instead of Google's alternatives. This made a lot of sense because Samsung and Windows have had a rocky relationship with Google in the past. But if you ask me, the most important question that a consumer is asking himself right now would be, should you buy an old smartwatch now that they're all getting discount? And my answer is, if you're thinking of getting a Samsung watch, I would personally say no. Now hear me out. Hear me out. I don't think it is a bad option. But for me personally, not having access to some Google apps that I use daily, that is something that I wouldn't just miss, but something that I couldn't live without. Unfortunately, stated Samsung that previous smartwatches will not get an update to Wear OS, but rather that this new watch and the rest forward will have this new Wear OS. But still, if you don't use and Google Maps and you want to have a smartwatch right now, even though Samsung will not just update to Wear OS, then buy it. In my opinion, Samsung watches are the greatest smartwatches for Android right now, and they're having crazy discounts for at least $100 at least where I live. And do not worry about updates. Samsung has confirmed that their old Samsung watches will get at least 2 more years of software updates. Regardless, if you want to try the new OS for yourself, I estimate that the new Samsung smartwatch will release in the end of August / start of September. When it comes to other Android smartphone watches that already have the old Wear OS or the previous Wear OS, we don't know if that can just get fixed by a software update. We haven't gotten any confirmations either from Google or from the individual companies, but the rumors do not look good, and I wouldn't personally recommend buying an old Android smartwatch unless you're buying a Samsung one, if that's what you already want or wish for. Personally, I just hope that we get the smartwatch that we as the consumers deserve. Even though Apple smartwatches are very solid, they only work on Apple products and not in the Android side. The Samsung smartwatch works pretty well on the Apple side, but it has some limitations in software. It's like you need to use the Samsung fitness apps since that's the only thing it can have on the phone. And the Google alternatives have, as I told earlier, been a little bit. And basically, yes, we have had companies releasing watches with Android instead of Wear OS because it had so many limitations, it ran that bad, but I still don't think that's the way to go. I would love, now that Samsung and Google are working together, to see more Android smartwatches having the rotating bezel, because the rotating bezel is legitimately the best thing of having an Android smartwatch. It feels so much better than having like a rotating crown or having like to touch the screen because it's so small. And like, I would love to see a ThickWatch Pro with a rotating bezel. And then I truly would consider going a ThickWatch Pro as my main smartwatch. Because it's thick. Anyways, that was it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe. And please keep an eye out for June 28th because Samsung is having a keynote where they're going to talk about their new Samsung smartwatch at the end of the day. In MWC, that is a tech event that's happening on Barcelona. Something I probably will make a video about, so keep an eye out in the channel for that. Like and subscribe and all that stuff, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.